All right, let's call our meeting to order. It's a committee meeting of the whole. Specifically, our items on our agenda are to continue to discuss our solid waste plan. As I said at the last meeting, there would be no decisions made tonight. This is for more information to give to us, and then if we decide that we want to move something from this committee, we'll move it to the full board next week if that's where we end up tonight. So with all that being said, I'd hand it back to the county executive and Ken to give us any more info. At any time that we think that if we need an executive session, we'll save that a little bit more towards the end like we did last time if we think it's necessary.
Sure.
All right.
We're going to start with I think I have a more clear opinion. We're going to have, do you have your post-closure numbers ready? We're going to start with post-closure. Just as an update for everybody, I was down in Cooperstown for a good chunk of the day on Thursday, talking with the other two counties on post-closure work and what we're going to do. And I believe what I said at the last meeting was the private side post-closure came in a little bit higher than we expected. And Otsego County asked us to work up the numbers on doing the post-closure work ourselves. So we've done that. We presented these numbers to both Otsego and Schoharie counties. And as you can see, we're working off of for post-closure, a $478,000 budget, or $78,000 and change. And we were also able to negotiate a administrative fee to the other two counties, with a 15% administrative fee in the first year, with a 12 the following year, then 10, 10, 10. So what we're looking at here, and this is my recommendation to the legislature, is that we set up an intermunicipal agreement with Schoharie and Otsego County that Montgomery County will do the post-closure work, and we will also charge the other two counties an administrative fee for doing that work. By taking this approach, we can save well over $200,000, specifically $231,000 on behalf of the three counties by working together as three counties and Montgomery County taking the lead. So, I know Duke asked for the pros and cons. I'm not even getting into pros and cons of the private and the public side on post-closure because I think feel that good about this piece. If we want to talk about staffing and reasons why, we have what we have in this budget, we can have Paul speak. But this is very similar to what Mosa's budget was for post-closure. It would require two employees, two new Montgomery County employees, as well as some overtime and some part-time because leachate needs to get hauled on the weekends and it doesn't stop at 5 o'clock at night. So, but I like to emphasize, by choosing this method, we're going to be saving taxpayers about $230,000 a year when compared to doing this privately. So to me, this is the way to go.
On the post-closure.
On the post-closure. We'll get into transfer station operations in a minute, but I thought we'd start with the low-hanging fruit here tonight.
Question, Matt. Sure. So, of what we determined the post-closure amount would be, our share in Montgomery County is 42% of that. Otsego's 40, Schoharie's 18, and that's of the 550, 275. But, am I saying this right? However, we're going to charge an administrative fee to the other two counties, which is going to reduce, I don't want to say reduce our share because we're doing work there, but tell us how that shakes out.
Sure. Well, and one of the things is, when negotiating with the other counties, I said, listen, we're going to bear expenses that aren't necessarily in here. I think some of the ones we cited were payroll and some of the more administrative costs that, say someone in Paul's office or maybe Sean's office is helping with some of the bookkeeping that aren't directly billable. So, we did go back and forth a little bit over what would be an appropriate fee, but we stressed to them that, we'd like a little extra leeway in that first year, which is why we're able to get the 15%. And,
Oh, I'm sorry, it's right there. That's what
Yeah.
I was at. The 15, administrative fee, 15%, that's the total of what the two are giving us?
correct.
I mean, it's
And-
71,775? The 71,000.
Yeah, that would be the total administrative fee for all three counties, as the way Paul did it. That would be a 42%, or they would be, Otsego, for example, would be 40% of that 71,000.
Gotcha. That's what I want to know.
And then, just as a mechanical issue, so we're all on the same page, the way we would design this, it would be similar to MOSA, where the payments from the other two counties to us would be a fixed payment, and then if we were higher or lower, because we are only gonna bill them actual costs, not just the budget, then we would do a refund basis. This was something that was important to me as we were talking about it with them, because then I don't have to come to you and say, hey, I need, or we need, $100,000 to kick this off. We're gonna be, that will be built into the mechanism, and that will be done through Sean and Paul's office. We still, obviously, some of the more personnel matters, where are we gonna put the person, what their title's gonna be, all that stuff, we can't do that until we're confident that the legislature is on board with this decision, so. But I think we've hammered this one out pretty well, and I'm confident that, doing the post-closure is not only the best way to go, but it's the most efficient way to save people money.
So they're two full-time? Describe that again, two full-time. We talked about an accounting position, or someone to, where's
Yes.
that at?
Well, that's not included in post-closure because that's part of what we're talking about here. Because whether we go private or public on the operation of the landfill, we still need to have that accounting person no matter what.
That person can do this, though?
Correct.
That's what I'm saying, no matter whether you want private?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Correct. And this is really, we also have on post-closure a $1 million emergency fund that we've talked about. And there's a mechanism that we've created with the other counties, and we've reached agreements. It'll be laid out in the intermunicipal agreement of, having all three county treasurers involved. And so Sean will be involved as well. I think the issue would be, okay, is this person more appropriately in Paul's office or Sean's office? How we're gonna work that out, but again, that's a little bit down the line.
Post-closure is gonna be around forever. So, this is a 5-year intermunicipal?
This is 5 years.
5-year intermunicipal agreement. Just so everybody's on board and understands, after 5 years, the post-closure doesn't go away. This agreement might. We may decide that the three counties just gotta share the cost and do it privately, right? Am I okay?
Yeah, and I think on the post-closure, where there's such a clear benefit to doing it ourselves, I think it's definitely worth the shot. When we talk about, the operation of the transfer stations, you're gonna be talking about more employees. So that's something that you really wanna take that into consideration as far as, you wanna think not just for the next 3-5 years, but 10 years, Because it's gonna be hard to come back, well, on that side. Here, it's a little different.
Anybody, of the legislators, starting over here, anybody have any questions on this? Okay, Terry, and then we'll have Joe.
Matt, would any of our employees that we hire for post-closure be, if we went on the public side for the transfer site, would we be able to use for the transfer sites? Like the accountant, or...
Well, yeah, that person is integral to no matter what we do. No matter what choices we make today or at the end of this month, we're gonna need that person no matter what.
Well, I guess my point is, if we do post-closure, would that, and we have to hire some employees, would that knock down the amount of actual new employees we would have to hire for the transfer site?
There was,
If you want.
yes and no. I mean, we're only talking about 2 people for post-closure.
Two?
Two
And-
full-time people, and those are basically haulers.
Truck
And when they're
drivers?
not hauling, then, I'm sure Paul's gonna put them to use doing other things. But, now if we're in, obviously, the if we're doing the transfer stations, I mean, I would imagine you could put them to work doing that as well.
Okay.
I think the question you're trying to get at is how much is that benefit if we do both?
Right, right.
And, you know, we'll get into, I think when I want to compare apples to apples on the private and public side, but my answer to you is, there isn't a massive, we've looked at that. That was one of the things we took a good hard look at. I mean, yes, obviously when you have, you know, more to work with and you're doing both things, there's some certain economies of scale there and you can get some benefit. But I think when we look at the numbers on the other issue, you're gonna see it's really a close race.
All right.
Just so we're not confusing it also, and then I'll recognize Joe. The two employees we're talking about are simply going to be DPW employees that are gonna haul leachate.
Correct.
They're not a separate entity
Correct.
that you're hiring, that you're setting up for post-closure. So these people could be hauling leachate one day, and then on the
And we
days
got
that
into a
slow.
lengthy discussion with Rich Baya about personnel, and as we got to go, I said, guys, let's hold on a second, we don't even know if we're going this way, you know? If we gotta figure out what we're doing, you know, by the end of the month, and then we have a month to implement it, and that's where we'll break down a lot of those decisions. What's their title gonna be, who's the direct supervisor, and all that good stuff.
Right. Joey?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, you budgeted for the 5 years, correct? This is a 1 year, or 5 years for the total 5 years?
Yeah, this would be our budget for the 5 years.
Is there any anticipation of anything changing major in that, or is that?
Well, when you're in I've
Yeah,
known
I
more about
agree.
post-closure and leachate and landfills than I ever dreamed of. The big variables here are volume of leachate. You know, we've had, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, we've had anywhere from 1 million gallons up above, way exceeding 4 million gallons. A lot of it depends on how much rain you get that year.
So that's pretty close, it's gonna stay in that area.
Well, that's the one thing that's gonna vary. But the thing here is, we're gonna bill on actual costs. So, for example, where would we, disposal leachate, you got $150,000 here, that's a big chunk of this budget. That might not be $150,000, but whatever it is, we're gonna bill on actuals for, this is just a framework, moving forward.
Okay, so it could be 50 or 60,000.
Yeah, it could be less. There's been some talk about, you know, and I know Tom and I have talked about, you know, reducing leachate, whether that can happen or not. I don't know. A lot of it's out of our hands and it's in Mother Nature, but, you know, this is, you know, really we modeled an engineering firm, I think Cornerstone, was it? Cornerstone. You know, as they're doing their reports, and we've modeled a lot after this. And the one thing that makes me feel pretty comfortable about this is that we have history to go off of with MOSA. They're not a private company that doesn't have to share their records. They're a public entity, and we can see everything that has been going on, and that's what we use to base these numbers on.
Okay, thank you. So,
This is a 1 year snapshot.
Correct.
Not, I mean, it's what would happen the next 5, but the numbers on here are 1 year's worth of.
Correct. I think you're gonna see a similar budget for the next, you know, 5 years. I don't think it's gonna be anything that's gonna really, again, I think the leachate, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, I think, is there any other expenses where that could vary greatly?
I guess one of the big variables would be if Cornerstone during their inspection or something, they recommend reconstructing part of the leachate collection system or new catch basins, whatever, or maybe a cap on the landfill repairs. There are those variables, but those would be there regardless of.
then we split the same percentage in then for one.
And yeah, and there's been some talk about, in the 3 county meetings, how we can prepare for stuff like that. And, yeah, and by us, you know, working together on post-closure, and I think that's the biggest, one of the bigger differences here on the post-closure is that, you know, we might have that incentive to work with the other counties, see what we can do to you know, reduce that leachate, but I don't want to present that as something that's gonna save us a whole lot of money, because really it's, Mother Nature is the biggest determinant in that.
Matt, something that could save us some money though, is when we talk about disposing of the leachate, right now we're going to Amsterdam, Canajoharie. We talked briefly last week about what would happen if we could take that to Montgomery County Sanitary Sewer District 1, if we can get the consent order fixed and they could take it. There's a possibility we could haul it to ourselves
Exactly, and I think.
and pay for just the cost of treating it.
Yeah, this is something that was brought up earlier, you know, given the fact that I haven't had a chance to speak directly with either Canajoharie or the mayor of Amsterdam and the common council. You know, maybe there's something where we could work out that if we're able to lower our tip fee, then maybe we can get a break there. But again, that would have to be negotiated, and I haven't had that.
And that, but that's, well, I guess my point is that's not reflected here. It
No,
could be,
no,
it could be
no.
a better number.
It could be, very well could be. But I want to give them the benefit of the doubt and don't, but I agree with you. I think that's a place that we can certainly do some more work.
Any other questions from the legislature about the post-closure?
Anything I'm forgetting, guys?
All right.
Are we charging ourselves the administrative fee? Or is that?
That was put in there for, just so we can get an idea what the total thing was. The total, how'd you say that, Paul?
It's reflected in the numbers, but basically it's overhead that we're already paying. So our share would be the people in the treasurer's office that are cutting the checks, the people in purchasing that are processing purchase orders.
So of that 70, almost 72,000, our portion is 30,000?
42%, whatever that is. Yeah, and really, I mean, as you can see, you know, all these, the stuff that you're gonna be looking at tonight is all expense driven. We wanted to budget worst case scenarios. We wanted to say, you know what, this is what we think on the conservative side that we're gonna be paying, and these are our possible expenses. And I think we've done a good job of laying it out there, so you can make your decisions on, you know, on the appropriations and the policy, and we take it from there. But I wholeheartedly support an intermunicipal agreement. I think it fits right into what the governor's talking about as far as sharing services, saving money for taxpayers. To me, this is a win-win for all the counties, taxpayers, us.
Okay.
I mean, just to put it in perspective, I can see what one of our bids were.
Yes.
One of the lower bids on post-closure was, we were looking at $709,000. So, that's a big difference.
All right.
Okay.
Moving on, we want to look at the next
Sure.
step.
Just sign for the first? Yeah, we'll give them both. One second. Now, we are going to get into specifics of what we negotiated with one of the firms. It's up to you. I have no problem, you know, speaking about this, but it might be more appropriate to go into executive session. But that's your call. I'll give you the data, and you can make a decision. It's the final offer.
Yeah, let's, if we could, I think we can all see the numbers in front of us, talk about talk about everything else first, and then if we think that we need to, that's.
Alrighty. So these are, we're going to take a look at, I wanted to frame this discussion into what Legislator Chesky said last time with the pros and the cons, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts. When you first look at the, we'll take a look at the public side, which is, you'll see on the bottom the 70, 76 per ton highlighted, just so we're all on the same page. It looks a little shorter than the private side. This reflects, and I'll just do an overview before we start digging into it of both. But this would reflect our costs and our expenses, more appropriately, our expenses on what it would take to run this operation ourselves. And this is very similar to what Paul was described at the last meeting. We did incorporate, we took a little bit of a leap of faith and incorporated the post-closure numbers on the public side that we just discussed. And
Is that this one?
yes, that's the one you're looking at. Yes. And as you can see here, we're looking at a tip fee at our expenses would be $70.76. Here are my thoughts on the pros and the cons. The pros, you have total control over everything essentially. Tipping fee, revenues, total 100% control. And this is more of a both thing. A good year is a good year, and a bad year is a bad year. So essentially, if we don't get the tonnage we're expecting and we're on the low side, we might take a hit. We get more tonnage than we expect, it's going to be a good year. But there's a little bit more of that unknown. The cons, so to speak, on this side is, and this is something we all know, there's definitely more uncertainty related to personnel costs, whether it be workman's comp, health insurance, and liability. Our liability will inherit, I mean, anybody can sue over anything, but our liability will be inherently greater if we're running the operation than if a private company is running an operation at a site that we own. So that's the way I view that. And then we can get into more details, but I just kind of want to go through the pros and cons on both sides. When you look at the private side, with what we went back and did some negotiating, we're looking at, with the post-closure, the $69.54 a ton, which is comparable. We're in the ballpark here. It doesn't mean we have to set our price at this. We can set the price at whatever we'd like. But just at our expenses, the way we have it budgeted here, we're at $69.54. Some of the pros, I believe we have a little bit more stable, clearer picture of our expenses moving forward. We pretty much know what they're going to be, with the exception of fuel. There's fuel surcharge language in the proposal, and should diesel hit $5 a gallon or something crazy, there's a fuel surcharge language in there. We can get that language for it if you'd like. On the pro side, there isn't an upfront investment here. We're not going to come and say we need $150,000 to kickstart this thing. And if we kept it at, you'll see we're at, over the terms of the 3 years, $69.54. For the first 2014, 2015, we would actually generate a surplus. And then if you look to 2016, we would be at potential cost of $34,919 if the current tipping fee is maintained. So, but what do we set the tipping fee at? Do we set it at 71? Build us a little cushion preparing for that final year? We could do that. There's some flexibility there. But as far as the cons, the big con is, the fuel surcharge, as well as, we haven't done business with this company before. For some reason it didn't work out, we'd have to RFP it again, or then decide to take it in-house. One thing that I think we need to be mindful of is where do we want to be, as I think the numbers show a picture that, we're in the same ballpark here. I mean, there's not a massive, like there was in the post-closure where it was a clear savings. But where do we want to be in 10 years? Do we want to have this department and, run these transfer stations? Do we want to have these transfer stations or not? Or maybe we don't want them. So, and if you're of the thought process that we shouldn't have a transfer station or 2 transfer stations, then I wouldn't suggest creating, a 10 plus people that are going to invest in Montgomery County and working here and all that stuff, just to say, okay, we don't want a transfer station on the back end. But if you do think we're going down that road, it's a viable option. On the other side, if you think you want to get out of the business, the private way would be a good way to go, because you have 3 years and you can figure out what you want to do more. I could say long term, but 5 years from now isn't long term. So that's my take on it for now. I'm more than happy to answer some questions. I'm sure you have a bunch.
Terry,
Matt, got to do contracting Is this their first attempt to run a transfer station?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
No.
I believe in their proposal, which I don't actually have handy, but there were some references and some stuff they did in the past.
So have you looked into their references?
A
Talked to
bit,
some-
a bit. I've been more focused, I mean, from what I understand, I talked to Dennis Heaton.
Yeah.
And I asked him his opinion. He says he's got confidence in them. He thinks they're a good outfit. But I have not personally done the reference checking or any of that. Yeah, they are currently working at our transfer stations now.
Okay.
I know that was a concern that has been brought up just recently, and yeah, that's definitely a risk there.
Joe?
Paul or Matt, did they put up any kind of a security bond or anything to get this contract, or not really?
There was a
There's a
bond,
bid bond.
a surety bond that was required with the RFP.
Okay. That's all.
Go ahead, Ray.
Matt, I was wondering if you had a chance to talk to any of the BOSA employees that we have about possibly what kind of job they're doing down there, how they maintain their equipment, any issues that, I know you're talking to the higher
Yeah.
level folks, but I thought, I always like to get to the source myself, and those guys that are down there, or the guys in Randall, they know what's going on, and I think they could enlighten us quite a bit.
Yeah, I've talked to a few of them that have called and come in for meetings. I think all have suggested different changes that they would think. It's tough for me to say because number one, this is wrapping my head around this entire issue, and I'm not there every day. So as I witnessed in my meetings with some of our employees, even in our own departments, there's every different stories. So it's tough to tell, but I've heard, I have taken the time to listen to some folks. I think they said, some folks have said we could do with a little bit less than what we have here.
Personnel.
As far as personnel, my concern there is if we lighten up the personnel and really try to cut it close, then when we have a flood or we have something where our tonnage is increased dramatically, and I'm coming back to you and I say, guys, I need 2 more people, and you say, well, tough luck, Matt, you said you could do it with this. You know, and so that's why we wanted to be more on the side of, making sure when we tell you we can do it with this, then we can do it with this, and that's where the thought process was there. Just another point that just came to me that I had a note here, but for some reason I skipped over it. If for some reason we did have a disaster, and we need to leverage resources, both human and mechanical, the Godfrey company said they'd be able to leverage their, this is one of the things that came up, they could leverage 100, 200 people if they needed it, I guess was the way they said it, but I'm not sure we could do that. I know Paul has done his due diligence and said Fulton County would help out, and I'm sure we get help out from our neighbors. I'm not sure we could do it as fast as the private sector, but that was another issue that came up during negotiations.
Go ahead.
Okay, just to be clear, the operative numbers here that we're using for comparison purposes are 70.76 per ton for the public side, and 69.54 in the private.
Correct.
Okay, and the 70.76 factors in all the employee benefits if we were to go on the private side, public side, excuse me.
Correct.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
And really, we try to be thorough with all those personnel costs, and I think we've done a good job with it.
2 things. In 2006, when we had a flood, and this is nothing directed at the MOSA employees themselves, because they did a tremendous job as far as I'm concerned in helping us, but it was, for those of you who may have been around, I just remember it clearly because I was chairman of the board, and we wanted MOSA to open in Randall that day, Saturday, I think even Sunday. And again, this is nothing against the employees because they did it. But, Paul, you remember it wasn't going to happen with the leadership that was there at that time. My question to you is, have you had those types of conversations with, gotta do? Because if they were actually running it, I want to know that, because, you know, we were going to be forced to dump 25 trucks out at the gate if they didn't open. And as a private entity, has to understand that these things are happening more and more around here, and we need that open. Now, again, that was nothing, the employees were there, and I remember they did a wonderful job, but we had to get Mr. Chichester on board to open the place first. And that was really, as chairman of the board, that was difficult for me to swallow, that I had to beg.
Well, actually,
Again, that wasn't these
that was
folks.
brought up by Gotta as a point of, as a point of them trying to sell themselves, is that if something happened, I mean, let's face it, they're gonna wanna gobble the tonnage up as much as possible.
I know,
And
but I
then-
might want to write something like that into an agreement.
Oh, okay.
I think you would want to cover yourself,
Sure.
just say that. The second thing that I just want, I commented on this last time, I'm going to echo what you just said. I really believe the legislature has to come to that determination of, I know 5 years doesn't sound like a long way down, but are we going to be in this business? And if we are, that's okay, then we can make that decision to do it publicly. But if you truly aren't, to put people out there for 2 or 3 years and say, we're going to create this and then uncreate it in a few years, I have a hard time doing that to people. You know what I mean? I think we really got to think about the avenue that we want to take. And if it's to move forward, and if we're going to make the decision to open these stations and have them run by us, and let's just do it and do it the right way, the best that we can with the people we have. But if we're not, let's not do it for 2 or 3 years and then fold up shop and tell everybody else sorry, because that's just not a good. We have to make that as decision as a legislature, I think, of how we want it. Do you agree?
Well, I think it'd be easier to go private and then public as compared to public and then private.
Well, absolutely.
I think that's the point here.
But you have to, somehow you gotta come to that.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to add, relative to what you were talking about, that you could wind up in the business, you might think that you hired somebody to take care of all these things for you, and all it takes is one phone call and you find out you're back in that business. I had that experience when I was mayor in Amsterdam with a recycling agent that we had a contract with, and the next thing you know, I was in the recycling business. Mm-hmm. We had an understanding with the county with respect to subsidies of the tipping fees, and when the county took it upon themselves one time not to subsidize, then I was hauling garbage down to Schenectady instead of to Mosa. So all it takes is one phone call from the company that may be struggling, and you're back in the business anyway. So, and I think you have way more control if you do it on the public side.
Well, that's a clear pro to the public side.
I don't know that we need to go into executive session, do we? I think we're fine like we are. I think I don't really see a need. I don't know. Do you? Anybody?
I mean, I think you guys have the numbers. This is what we worked up. My concern is that we pass this by the end of the month, because whatever we do, I'm gonna have a month to implement it. So, on the private side, 30 days is fine. On the public side, 30 days is fine, but we can't be.
The only thing I would say to the legislature, if you, because of the time constraints, if you wanted to go into executive session to discuss, again, the employment history, the legal, to try to come to a determination on which path you want to take, only because you want to get something on for next week's meeting. Or I'll call a special meeting. We don't have to do it at next week's meeting. I can call a special meeting, but that would be the reason I would think you may want to talk about anything.
Mr. Chairman, I see a lot of work was put in here, and I'm fairly confident in these numbers and the proposals as set forth. They're virtually the same. So I'm not sure we need an executive session. I feel very confident going forward with the public model.
So coming out of committee, would you feel comfortable, and again, I don't need to go into executive session to do this, sponsoring a resolution, at least to get whether you want to say public or private tonight doesn't matter, I'm suggesting at least a resolution to put forth to the legislature at next week's meeting so we can hit our time constraints. If you wanna suggest that we take the public model and there's a second to do that, we can do that. That doesn't mean that at next week's, if somebody else would rather amend that to go private, you can also do that.
I would do that, Mr. Chairman. If we get a second.
So, I mean, are we clear on that process and how that works? It sounds like you want to make a motion to have a, correct me if I'm wrong, resolution to, or we may want to separate this. The municipal agreement with the leachate, I think we want as a separate resolution.
That will be a
Correct.
separate resolution.
It's not
You
mixed.
should do them separately, but I would move both of them for the public.
Right. So Duke would sponsor a resolution to move forth us taking care of the leachate.
It'd be the intermunicipal agreement.
The intermunicipal agreement and
Otsego.
would we have to, Doug's not here, authorizing the county executive to sign those agreements, or does that not necessary? We're just putting to, we don't, trying to figure out the
Well, it's
resolution.
similar to what we
itself.
did with Fulton County. There was I forget the specific language, I know Sheriff probably has it, but
Well,
I didn't come prepared on resolution tonight, I
Confirming,
apologize.
I believe you guys
Con-
confirmed
okay.
his,
Whatever it is, let's check with Doug and make sure we have, I think we're all on the same page to put that resolution forward for the leachate. And Roy seconds the resolution on the leachate.
Tom, are you wanting to put this on the finance committee for next week?
No, full board.
Well, full board's 2 weeks. Oh, wait.
Finance is-
Yeah, no,
Finance
next
is
week, you're right, tomorrow's.
Don't confuse me, Cheryl.
Well, today's Monday, I'm confused.
St. Patty's Day, you can't be confused yet.
Okay, full board.
Right. So now let's talk again about the motion by Duke to enter into, it's not really an agreement, but the idea to establish, what you're saying is establish the public sector model. Okay?
As outlined,
Right. And I think that that should be attached to the resolution,
exactly.
with that being attached to the resolution. And Roy wants to second that. So, actually, the first resolution we talked about, is everybody good with I'm not here. Usually you gotta have a majority moving that first one forward. Is everybody good with the first one, leachate moving it forward
Yes.
for a full board? Okay.
Yes.
Now talk about this one with the public. You have Duke and Roy sponsoring a resolution to move forward with a public sector model and attach it to the resolution. So with that being said, is everyone good with moving that to the full board? Or if not, is there a resolution to move it the other way? What I'm trying to do is get a resolution here to move it to the full board.
Sponsor a resolution we need for that, fine, move it to full board
For,
for the public as described here.
all right.
So which one is that?
The public one is us forming our own entity of sorts to handle the transfer
No, I'm
station.
sorry, I meant the private, excuse me.
You said the private. All right. Is there any other support for the, it really doesn't matter because it could be amended at the full board meeting, but I'm trying to get some input here.
The private, that's what I meant, excuse me, I misspoke.
Well, Mr. Chairman, there's a resolution in a second. You don't need necessarily full board to move it. We can see if it goes by majority of those present. Not majority of those present, I think we need a majority of the board.
I mean, to move it to the committee. Right. I mean, move it from committee,
That's right.
move it from committee to the full
This
board.
is the key.
Right. So the committee tonight is 9 of us, even though one's absent. So you would need, I
It's always
believe,
not.
right, I believe Doug would tell us 5 of us would need to support moving
That's-
that thought
that's
forward.
correct.
Are there 5 people here that are supporting moving that?
I believe so.
Well, you wanted to do it the other way. We're not talking about the other way right now.
No, this is moving it to the private sector. I made a mistake when I said.
No, Duke's resolution was the public, to move the public forward.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And what I'm looking for is there are 5 bodies in the room here that want to move that public side forward.
Yes, one.
No, there's two.
That's doing it,
You're moving the public side forward,
that's
three.
doing it in-house?
That's doing it in-house.
I wanna do that.
All right. So,
Can we do roll call?
well, sure.
Well, we can, we'll start with you.
No. Aye.
Legislator Quackenbush.
It's my turn?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm thinking,
You can,
I'm gonna
you can pass
pass.
and come back to you.
I'm winging this because we don't usually do it at a committee of the rest.
You're moving the, right?
Public.
No, the motion for public, we're trying to see if there's enough support to move that to the full board. If not, it's obvious the other way that it wants it to go.
All
Okay.
right.
I feel like we're at the full board now.
Well,
You know, I don't know what the point of it, we're being asked to make a decision now, which,
It's not gonna change.
You're making a decision to move this resolution.
yeah,
to move the resolution.
but you're basically coming up with what your views are. The biggest reservation I have is gotta do. I haven't been hearing good things. I don't know if there's some information out there that could be gotten that could convince me, but I guess I'm on the fence.
Well,
You know, I don't know
a
what to
maybe's
tell you.
a maybe's a no, a no is a no, a pass is a no, a yes is a yes.
All right,
Chairman.
no then.
Legislator White's, what did you say?
I said aye. Chairman, as the motion was made, there is some, this is basically putting the resolution on for full board.
That's what it's doing.
So that we can vote on it next week, yes? Okay.
You know what, I'm going to say yes, and here's why. Because what we're simply doing here is putting the motion on to vote on it. It is voting on the public. If you decide between now and next week that you don't want to go that route, you simply would vote no and then amend the resolution to go private. Is everybody in agreement with that? Right? So I'm going to say yes because I want to move the resolution to the full board without a whole lot of. So you have a no, a yes, a yes, a yes, a yes. Is there one more yes?
I already said yes.
So we have enough to move this to the full board as it is. I'm not committing tonight. I'm just telling you, I'm committing, my personal view is I'm committing to move this to the full board. I'm not committing to my stance on that because I have some more homework to do. As Terry had said, I have a little bit of,
I actually have a question. I noticed in the public sector side, there's exactly 17 positions. And I recall you mentioning in our last meeting that there were actually 17 employees at MOSA. Is that a coincidence?
I think I said that. I think I thought the number was 17 and I saw some folks shaking their head no to me when I said 17 and I was trying to get out of them what that number was. How many are?
7.
7?
3 Mansons, 2 Randall, 2 Garage.
Say it again.
3 in Amsterdam, 2 in Randall, 2 in the garage.
The rest are management, staffing, secretarial, whatever.
They work at the other transfer station.
Other counties.
Oh, gotcha. All right. So there's 7.
I mean, I guess I'm in favor of the public sector, assuming that those people's positions are reserved under this new entity.
But this is calling for 17.
Right. But I'm assuming that this basically provides them a position in this new organization.
Those personal people, I don't think we're saying that. I'm not, we can keep talking about it. I mean, we're done with the resolution. We moved it forward.
Right.
We're just continuing to have talk now. Your question is, why is it 17 and they're saying 7?
No, I'm not concerned with the number being 17. I'm just concerned that these people are going to lose their jobs when MOSA shuts down and we start up this, assuming we start up this new entity.
My personal feeling, and I think the county executive said I believe the county executive said it last week, and I feel the same way. Obviously, we can't tell a private sector firm what to do. We can certainly, if public sector, say what we would like, but as legislators, we don't hire and fire them. So I can't guarantee anybody, any personal name anyway, the job. I would certainly hope that we would be looking at people who've been doing the job for a long time, but.
There's a lot of full-timers.
Question. The 17 number, I just want to clarify, what I'm looking at here with the transfer station operations, it looks like there's 12 positions there and then 2 for post-closure. Where's the 17?
I don't know, I came from Ops. There's 11 full-time employees in this model here.
Okay, now that's post-closure and transfer, or one?
No, this is just one, right, Paul?
Yeah.
Now, that proposal includes transfer station operations, hauling the garbage to Fulton County, and post-closure.
Okay, and that's 11. Okay.
Yeah, the 17, just for clarification, that came from me, only because I had heard that there were 17 employees total at MOSA, which probably is if you count everybody, or close. If you count the other stations plus, so that came from, that was from me. I mean, I don't know, at some point you were going to give us your recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, the biggest thing for me is where, and I know, I understand what you're saying as far as, you know, yeah, you could go private, but you could end up being in the business. But I would lean, because it's close, I would lean private, because I feel like we're opening ourselves up to risk with, and potentially unknown personnel costs at a time where, you know, we got a whole other host of issues to tackle. But again, I think there's not that clear answer like there was on the post-closure. I think this is, I genuinely believe deep down this is almost a philosophical question on whether you think we should be doing this. And that's how I am. I mean, I'm not confirmed coming out in one way or the other. There's ups and downs to both sides. I would lean at this time private.
All right, so just to be clear, we have 2 resolutions up that we're going to add to our full board meeting. One is the leachate, and one is to create a public, or go with a public model, all right?
Both sponsored by Duchessis and Beckman.
Yes. All right,
And if at any point moving forward, the legislators would like to come in, sit down, talk a little bit more with us, we'd be happy to do that. Also, did I get a sense that we're all feeling good about the 3-county partnership on the post-closure? Because some of that stuff's gonna have to move fast. So if I get a sense that we're in a good place there, then we'll start moving forward with that.
all right. Any other discussion? I don't have anything else on the agenda, but legislators, anything? We good?
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn? Second?